Well, friends, this here's David Both. Today is May the 2nd, and it's 2016. It's a beautiful day in New Mexico. And well, I'd like to do this series on some very important things. We've been going along now for quite a while. We've learned more and more stuff, and I think it's time that we go into this really, really deep. Now, we did that series on the universe, basically, which really, all we really did was we went back a million years, and all we basically said was, yeah, there was all this evolution. Started on Nibiru, and they talked about this evolution that they did and how they came here and so forth. But I want to go into this way deeper because, amazingly enough, it goes deep. Mythology is a story of our entire history. It's really quite amazing to know that the Bible actually gives the history of mankind back millions and millions of years ago. But a vague history, but nevertheless a history, an idea of where we came from, how we got here, and what we're doing. It's all in the Greek mythology, the Sumerian tablets, Egyptian writings, Babylonian writings, all of these stories that we hear about the gods of Olympus, and all of this is a very symbolic drama of our life as humans in this galaxy. That's right. It explains, and remember, it's 110,000 light years across the galaxy. So we're talking about 50,000 light years to the center, and we're probably 50, 60, 70 light years out from the center here on the solar system, floating around this Orion arm. And we're talking about millions of light years. So distance, I mean, good grief. It's like 1 trillion miles. 1 light year is like 2 trillion miles. It's a long, long ways. So not only is it a long ways in distance, it's a long ways in time, because it takes a long time. You know how people say, how far is it to Dallas? And they'll say, well, it's 5 hours. Hours is time, not distance. But we can count, in certain circumstances, we count distance by time. And in this situation, we can also do that because it takes a certain amount of time to go a certain distance. So when we're looking at light years, we're talking about time. So distance is a lot different because there's a whole lot of distance in a light year because it travels at 186,000 miles per second. Light does. It travels 186,000 miles per every second. So this is how we're measuring vast distances, measuring it in the time it takes for light to go in a second. So we're dealing with vast spaces and time. Now, if we're dealing with time and space like that, we're also dealing with consciousness. We're actually dealing with, there wouldn't be any space nor any time without consciousness. You ever heard the story if a tree fell in the woods and there was no one around? Did it really fall? Did it really make a sound when it hit the ground? There was no ear to hear it. Well, this is kind of like this. The universe exists because we exist, because we're conscious beings, and we are the masters of this domain. We are the creators of our own consciousness, and our own body is a part of our own being. So, what we're dealing with when we're looking at this universe is things that we can measure, things that we can see with our eyes. We've come a long way from Galileo and Copernicus, just using angles and right angles and so forth, and hypotheses that, sort of formulas to determine by right angles and so forth how far something might be in the sky, to the time now where we've actually got telescopes that you can look out there and see long distances. we've gone from basic telescopes to now we have sending out gamma rays that will go way out beyond our own galaxy, and we've mapped out with gamma rays something like 500 billion galaxies beyond our own galaxy. So now the next known galaxy that's the closest to our own, we have the Milky Way galaxy, is where we live, but the next galaxy is the Andromeda galaxy. And there are those who talk about that in movies and programs and stuff, and it's very exciting, very fascinating and fantastic to imagine. But as far as this video goes, I think we're just going to stick with this galaxy. Be honest with you, I really don't know anything about those other galaxies, and I don't think anybody could possibly know, because we're talking about time and space here. We're removed so far away from the Andromeda galaxy and other galaxies. All we can say about those other galaxies is that they are similar to ours. And so therefore, because we see them and we notice that they have same characteristics, such as a swirling vortex and swirls of stars and so forth that make a spinning disk or vortex, we realize then that just like we see in the sky, we see stars, and we realize they're similar to our sun. Of course, you can't just blanket statement say, oh, well, they're all the same, because our sun, we find out, is a particular type of sun. It's a very small type of star. And now we've found out that some of these stars are older and some are larger. There are stars that are so large that they would, go all the way out, they would extend all the way out to Pluto, right, from the sun. Almost 1 trillion miles, is huge. So some of these stars are exploding, and they're becoming nebulas, and so there's various different and sundry different kinds of things. But basically, each thing that we see in the universe is similar. It's like a divided cell that basically came off the other parent body, sort of has they're duplicates. We were made in the image of our Father in heaven. There's a large macrocosm in this universe, and we as individual humans are microcosms of that macrocosm. And this is the way the entire universe works. So we could say then that all of the galaxies are probably similar to our own and have vast numbers of species and planets and abodes. And Jesus said, my Father, in his house there are many abodes, there are many mansions, homes, abodes, places to dwell. He wasn't talking about houses. He wasn't saying that his Father in heaven lives in a house, and in that house there's other houses. He's not talking about those kind of houses. He's talking about places to dwell, for your soul to dwell. And your soul dwells in a body. The body dwells on a sphere, some sort of dimension, some realm, some kind of... The Bible also calls it a glory. There are various glories. We graduate, we transmigrate. 1 Corinthians chapter 15 talks about how God gives it a body that it pleases him, and it goes through the graduation of the fish and the birds and the mammals and the humans, and then it says in the resurrection there'll also be graduations. There's that one of the moon, there's that graduation that is higher, which is of the sun, and then there are the stars, which each star differeth in glory. 2 Corinthians chapter 3 and verse 18 talks about how we are going to be transformed and changed from glory to glory, even as is done by the Lord. So you see, there's this graduation and these glories. So the glory is one way to explain where we are. A certain, graduated glory. Glory meaning the splendor or the brilliance of that particular sphere. A house is another word to represent a place to live. And so the great house of our Father is the universe. And within that universe, there are many houses, not just the earth. Our Lord Jesus told us that it isn't just earth where we have homes. In fact, you might easily be able to imagine that the angels certainly have someplace to live. And so we know the angels do not live on the earth, but they live in another dimension, another home. They have various glories. There are different kinds of angels. Now, it's amazing because that people don't see this, but the Bible talks about the angels all the time as stars. You can find this in the book of Job, where it talks about the morning stars that clap their hands for joy at the founding of the earth. Well, now, think about what that's saying. The earth hadn't yet been made. It was being founded. And all of these angels are looking down upon the earth and clapping for joy. Now, why do you suppose they did that? Do you think they just was a group of angels that followed the Lord around, and every time He creates something, they just clap their hands and yay, and then they go on to the next creation? No, they were creating something very important to their own evolution. These sons of God were there, part of the Elohim. This is what it says in Genesis chapter 1. Let us make man in our image. So you see, why did they make man? Why were they clapping their hands, these angels? You see, we're all the sons of God. We are the sons and the daughters of our Father in heaven. And we are the ones that were there before the creation of the earth. Before we made our home, we were there. We lived in a different home. There are many homes. But the reason we made this home was for experience, for incarnations. You see, that's why in Genesis chapter 2, this garden was created. And there were these 4 rivers that flow out of the center. And in the center of the garden is the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. This is all very symbolic of our existence. Not when we were created, say, 6,000 years ago, but this was the creation of the universe, and it's a parable about our galaxy. There are actually 4 rivers or arms that come out from the center of the Milky Way galaxy, and one of those arms is the Sagittarian arm. It's very interesting because though human beings in the solar system is in the Orion spur, it's called a spur and not an arm because the Orion spur does not actually go all the way back to the center. See, if you want to go all the way back to the center of the galaxy, you're going to have to follow the Sagittarian or the Perseus arm, because the Orion spur is like a bridge between the Sagittarius arm and the Perseus arm. You get out about halfway down the Sagittarian arm, and all of a sudden it splits off, and there's this little spur, like a bridge. Now, this is very interesting. We don't know much about this, but certainly there is something very amazing going on here. At this little short spur we call the Orion arm or the Orion spur is where the solar system is. It's right about in the middle of this spur. In other words, right about in the middle between the large spiraling river or arm of the Perseus arm and the large spiraling arm coming out from the center that is the Sagittarian arm. And in the middle of that spur, that bridge, sits the solar system. Now, if you're going to look north in the sky to the Polaris, what you're going to see is you're going to be looking north from the Earth. What does that mean? That means when you're looking north, you're looking towards the center of the galaxy, down the Orion arm. And as you go down the Orion arm, you're looking north, you're going to go about 20,000 light years until you reach the Sagittarian arm. You reach this, you go across this bridge and you finally make it to the major river. This major arm that comes out from the center. And you could go all the way back down that arm and reach the center of the of the galaxy. So, in mankind's evolution, we've talked about this. We all began with our Father in heaven. We're children of our Father in heaven. We all lived with our Father in heaven. And we lived in the center of the galaxy. That is where the light is. And that is where our Father lives, because the New Testament says he dwells in unapproachable light. And this is light that is absolutely unapproachable for you and I at this point. Because even though, literally, because it's 50,000 light years away. So we can't literally get in a spaceship and fly with the technology that we have today, with our own consciousness and our own level of evolution. We cannot even achieve getting there. Even if we had the greatest spaceship and all the, we don't know how to build a ship to fly 50,000 light years. So that would be impossible in a literal sense for us at this time. Not only is it unapproachable literally, it is unapproachable in our mind. In other words, in comprehension. Because you see, there in the light representing consciousness and knowledge and wisdom and truth. Those are truth and knowledge and a comprehension and a consciousness that we, at this time, in our level of consciousness, cannot comprehend. So our Father in heaven dwells in unapproachable light. Now, we came from that place. So, you see, we do know all this stuff. It's not foreign to us. We were once there. We knew it all. We are the children, the heirs of the universe. See, but right now we're just little babies. When babies, they come out of their womb, they don't know anything. Consciously, they can't even walk. They can't talk. They got to learn everything. So that's what we are. We're babies. But you see, babies come from a place that's secret, from the mother's womb. Why? Where do they come from? Well, this is the great secret of the universe. We came from spirit. We are spiritual children of our spiritual Father. Just as we have a physical father, we have a spiritual father. And in this scheme of things, our spiritual Father is vastly more superior to anything that we can think of physically. And so the time element and the process there is just amazing. This was trillions of years ago. But we've been evolving, transmigrating, and so it says in the scripture that our Lord Jesus, what is it that he ascended, but also that he descended into the lower regions of the earth. Okay, so he ascends, he descends. We've talked also about in many other videos how Israel was a type or an illustration of how this Christ child was born into the physical realm. Because you see, Israel is like in the center of the world. Basically, if you go over there in the Middle East, you go south, you got Africa. You go west, you got Europe, and you go east, and you got Asia. So there in the center is a place called Palestine. And right in the center of that is Jerusalem. Oh, see, Jerusalem, the grand city. This is a place that represents the center of the galaxy. It's a type of that. Well, wait a minute now. We had talked about in some other videos about how Jerusalem was the lowest place on earth. The Dead Sea is the lowest sea. The Jordan River is the lowest river. And this is this lowest descent that the Christ child was born in a manger. See, this is what houses animals. Carnal nature. The carnal nature, an animal house. And so the Christ doesn't belong in an animal house. It's the divine being. It's the Son of the divine being. It's the heir of all things. But yet this child, this grand Christ, was born in this animal house, this manger, lowly and humble, and he came riding upon an ass. You see, because he through his life conquered these carnal natures. And the ass, representing the lowliest of all the carnal natures, he had conquered it all, and he came riding into Jerusalem, and he died on a cross. Well, in the constellation, in the galaxy, we've got a cross. It's called Cygna, and it's about it's down that Orion's arm as you're going back towards the center. See? So when we came out from the center of the galaxy, we had to go by that area. And at that point, we reached that area of the Lyre, the constellation of Lyra. And right around in that area, there's another constellation called Cygna. And that's the Great Cross. And that's where as individuals, as we come out from our Father in heaven, and we're going down this grand transmigratory process and learning and growing and evolving, we come to the place where we must die. And also near this place is a place called Pleiades. And this is where, according to the mythologies, this is where Hermes, or Thoth, or the great Christ child, this is where he was born, because probably on Alcyone, because his mother was from the Pleiades. And so she nurtured him there, which is about 440 light years away from Earth, in the direction before we reach Earth. You see, here we are now, years later. We were on this Earth. We've incarnated many times. But where we all began, when we made our descent into Hades, into hell, was this cross. We went into Hades, or death. And that's Cygna. And that's that area, 450 light years, down that arm towards the center. So, coming out from the center towards our direction, when we reached this particular place called the cross, we died. And not far from there is the Pleiades, where we were born into this world, a carnal creature in this manger. And this is where we begin, in a place called Cygna, because this is where all the mythology begins, in the constellation of Lyra. And in that constellation, they've discovered recently, scientists have discovered a great, amazing thing. It's a place that, see, remember now, we've talked about Orion, the nebula, Orion's nebula. We've talked about how this was a consciousness shift. Well, the Orion nebula is further on down from us, going in the southern area. And so that consciousness shift is really the consciousness shift that we're going to experience shortly, that we're actually experiencing now, which is going to bring us back to the center and start the whole process over again. Because you see, that Orion and that Orion's belt we've talked about, if you look up in the sky, you can look up in the southern sky, and you see Orion's belt, and you see that it is, as the night comes on, you see, if you go out at dark, just as it starts to get dark, the first two stars you're going to see is Vega and Ceres. Those are the first two stars because, you know, like especially this time of year, if you look up in the sky, look straight up in the air and you're going to see Vega. Vega is only like 25 light years away. And it's very important to our understanding of everything, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But if you look off down towards the south just slightly, you know, instead of looking straight up, kind of look towards the south, about halfway down the sky, you'll see Ceres begin to shine just as it gets dark. And those are the first two stars. Ceres is the brightest star. Now, that's why it comes out first, because the other stars aren't as bright, so they're not going to appear until it gets darker. So then when you see Sirius begin to form and it gets darker, take a straight line and go directly west from there, and you'll come to Orion's belt. As it gets darker, you'll notice that these three stars that make Orion's belt, it starts forming a square around those three stars. That square, as it gets really dark, you'll notice is like a window. And that was considered the ninth gate. Because you see, Orion's arm, is this Orion Nebula or whatever, is really about 1,000 light years away from Earth in the southern hemisphere, down out towards the outer darkness. along the Orion arm as it goes out. So when you're looking at the Pleiades and you're looking at Cygna, you're looking the other direction. You see, this is down the Milky Way arm, or the Orion's arm towards the north. But when you're looking south, you're looking out and down and towards the outer darkness. So we're almost there to this window, the ninth gate. And basically that's where Earth is. We're in that area of the universe where we, like Inanna in the stories of the Sumerian tale, where she goes through the 7 gates or the 9 gates of hell, and she gets to the bottom, and she's been removed all of her clothes and her jewelry and all of her outer appearances, and she's just down to being completely naked and standing at the altar of Hades, and she cries out, "Deliver me from this place." This is where we are, friends. We've come out from the center of the galaxy where the light is. We've gone down the Sagittarian arm for millennia, and finally come to this Orion arm. Well, we reach this place of the cross, and we die. We enter into Hades. And this is where we take on all of these various incarnations. And in this house that was created, this garden, there was created all of these animals that were brought to Adam to see what he might call them. Well, the animals are the zoo, or the zoology, or the zodiac. The animals are the stars that are in the sky, and all the natures and all the lives that we're going to experience, that we're going to subject and have dominion over in this grand garden that we're going to experience, this carnal nature that we're going to experience. We're going to see the bull. We're going to see the lion. We're going to see the eagle. We're going to experience all of these creations, and we're going to transmigrate down through all of these things and overcome all of these things, and we're going to conquer the garden and enjoy it and have dominion over it. And so now we're talking about reaching this place that is the 5th brightest star in the sky that we call Vega. Now, Vega is a star that is in this constellation Lyra. Lyra was a great it's a lyre is like a harp. I guess we call it a lyre. It's kind of hard to pronounce that for me, even though I know it's lyre. Sometimes I want to call it lyre. But this lyre, it's not a word that we use very often. We would probably call it a harp. But there were different kinds of harps, and a more ancient type of harp was called a lyre. And this was a story that the Greeks told about Orpheus. Now, he went to this underworld. Remember, we call it Hades. This is this area that we're talking about, Hades. He's come out from the grand, center of the galaxy, and he's this one of these gods, you see, Orpheus. And he comes out, and he goes down into the underworld. And it's one of the most famous stories in the Greek mythologies. So, he makes this lyre. It was the very first lyre that was ever made. It was supposed to have been invented, the lyre, by Hermes. That's the Greek god that we call Thoth in Egyptian. And in the Sumerian tablets, he's called Niningsiba. Now, this Hermes, of course, in Greek mythology, is the son of Zeus. And he's the son of Maia. Now, Maia is one of the Pleiades. You see, this is also where the Alcyon is. This is about 440 light years from Earth in the direction towards the center of the galaxy. So he's reached this point now where he's past Cygna and the Great Cross, and he's died and he's gone into Hades. And now he's born into this carnal realm, and his mother is there, one of the 7 sisters in the Pleiades. So Hermes fashions this lyre, and he fashions it from a shell, the shell of a tortoise. Well, he found this shell, or the tortoise, walking around outside of his cave, and he lived in this place called Mount Silon. in Arcadia. This was in Greek mythology. Arcadia was this great, ancestral home, right? So back when Orpheus lived in his ancestral home in the center of the galaxy, he found this little tortoise, and he took the tortoise and he hollowed it out, and he used the shell of the tortoise to make this lyre. And he cleaned it out. He made little holes around its rim, and then he tied 7 strings of a cow gut in order to make, strings that he could play on this lyre. Well, the 7, of course, as you can see, obviously, is very symbolic. And when you can harmonize these 7 strings, now the Bible talks about a 10-stringed harp. We've talked about that. But in this case, we're talking about 7 strings. So it's a different type of harmonization. This is the harmonization of time. So he cleans out the shell and he makes this lyre and he strums this beautiful music and he masters this song. Now, so this lyre gets Hermes out of trouble when he's a young man, and he's doing all these exploits. Because at some point he steals some of Apollo's cattle. There's interesting story, and we're like, what do we do with this? What does this possibly mean? How can we interpret this story? Well, we've just started interpreting it, friends. The lyre is a harmonizing of forces. And Orpheus is going to harmonize certain forces because he's gotten down into this region of the universe where he's now become very carnal. And so now Apollo, now we all know who Apollo is, even in the book of Revelation. Remember? Apollo is this Abaddon, or destruction. Apollo in Greek means destroyer. See, not a good thing. And this is what happens when you go to hell, friends. You're going to get destroyed. You're going to end up in a carnal, physical body, and it's not going to always be good. This is going to be forces of darkness all around you. And you see, interestingly enough, Apollo owns a bunch of cattle. Well, cattle are animals, friends. This is the carnal nature. But remember, what kind of carnal nature? Remember, each one of the animals has a different attribute. Cattle are domesticated animals. So you see, Apollo, the son of destruction, he owns cattle, or some very docile, domesticated carnal nature. See, he had it under control. Well, when Orpheus steals his cows, his domestic, his nature, the physical realm, Apollo gets really angry. And so then he says, I'm really mad. You got to return my cows. But Orpheus begins to play on this lyre, and he makes this beautiful music. He harmonizes the forces of the universe, the harmonies of the spheres. And this quiets Apollo, or destruction, so it doesn't kill him. See, so he has time to learn, to master this song while he's in this world. So he ends up giving the lyre to Apollo. Well, then there's all kinds of stories that surround this. I mean, Greek mythology is vast. It's not always easy to understand the entire stories because sometimes over the years they've been jumbled up and retold. But Orpheus then was this great musician, and he was able to charm the rocks and the streams with magical songs, they say. Well, what do you think that represents? How do you charm the rocks? You see, the physical realm, the physical carnal nature. You've got to learn how to master it, friends, or else you're going to be stuck. That's what the moral of the story is. So, this is another story. Jason and the Argonauts, right? And they were in search of the golden fleece. Well, this is what we're here for, friends. This is the magical tale. We come to this realm of the universe in search of the golden fleece. Aren't you all in search of that golden fleece? Right? This precious reward that we're going to get for conquering this realm and harmonizing all of the frequencies and the vibrations that we live under here. So this is what this story is about. And So the Argonauts, they hear this song. They would lure these sailors, right? They were coming on their boats, the Argonauts. And they would lure them into this realm of destruction, and they would die. But you see, Orpheus, he would sing upon his little lyre, and it would sort of counter these sirens, these awful siren noises that these nymphs were making to destroy. So it would sort of harmonize it. And, we got similar stories to that, like Saul and David. Remember how Saul was so angry, and David would play upon the harp, and it would sort of appease him, and he would quiet down, and the demons would kind of settle down, and he wouldn't go crazy. See, that's talking about how we're in this world, and we're having to appease all these very carnal natures and all of this darkness around us. And the only way to do that is by harmonizing the frequencies. Well, later on, Orpheus married another nymph. Her name was Eurydice. And Eurydice was... Aristeus was noticing this beautiful woman. And she was the son of Apollo. He was the son of Apollo. And so he came, Apollo's destruction, of course. So he attacks her in this fit of passion, right? Well, as she's running and fleeing from him, she stepped on a snake and died. Ooh, isn't that the same kind of story we got with Adam and Eve? And they ate this fruit from, and then this snake deceives her and she dies. This is the carnal nature that kills all of us, right? And this woman is our physical body. Well, Orpheus, he represents like the Christ, you see, the spiritual man. And he's the one that can master that song and makes that lyre. He's the one that enters into this animal nature body and conquers all this. And dies on the cross. And goes unto Hades and conquers all of these principalities and powers and dominions. So he's heartbreaking his dear maiden, the woman, the virgin. She's been, attacked by the dragon, right? Like it says in the book of Revelation. And he's unable to live without his young wife, right? He needs this woman. It's his soulmate. This is his body. Remember how Christ says that he's going to redeem his bride? Well, this is the same story. So he descends into this underworld to plead for her release. Friends, this is the story of our Lord Jesus. He came here to redeem you and I. Well, you see, the sound of this music from the lyre, it charms anyone, everyone, every cold heart in the universe, even the god Hades, the god of the underworld. So he finally agrees to let Eurydice go with Orpheus, and they go back to the land of the living. But, of course, there's one condition. And this is the condition, that Orpheus was not to ever look back. As he's taken her out, he's got to look towards the light and keep on going and never look back. It's kind of like the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, right? When Lot was told, and his wife, don't look back. I'm going to save you. I'm going to destroy the city, it's a place of destruction, right? But you're going to be saved. I'm going to get you out of here. Well, only problem is Lot's, we're always bummed out by that, right? Why did Lot's wife look back? Well, friends, this is just a mythological story. This is the same story that they tell, for thousands of years in the Greeks and the Sumerians and the Egyptians. And this story is our history, friends. It's the history of your soul. And friends, it's trying to tell you, please don't look back. You got to get out of this carnal nature. You got to learn to master that song, that lyre. You've got to get out and harmonize the forces. And never look back. And don't listen to the deception. So, in the story, he's wandering around through this dark passage, and he's leading his, her with him all the way up to the upper world, and he's playing this harp all the way, and he had this unnerving feeling, right? She's behind him, but he's not supposed to look back, right? And if he doesn't look back, supposedly he's going to save her, but he just can't help it. Is she back there? He's been going for all this time, and they're going through this dark passageways, and around the rocks and through the valleys and over the hills, and it's been like ages, and he just can't help it any longer. Is he doing all this for nothing? Does he have enough faith to believe she's there? Is he going to conquer? Well, finally he gets almost to the surface of the upper world of the light, the land of the living, and he turns around just to confirm, make sure that Eurydice is still there. Well, at that moment, boom. He shouldn't have looked back, you see. She went back into the depths of Hades. And there he was, stuck, realizing that he just really screwed up. And see, this is another illustration of how we as humans must not look back, or else we could be lost and have to start the whole process all over again. So,